Hey guys, I'm talking with you today about FPs, or a favorite person, and this is a term used in regards to borderline personality disorder. So an FP is someone that a borderline person feels a strong attachment to. The FP is quite often on the BPD person's mind. There's almost like an obsessive thing going on, and it's almost like it can be like a best friend times 1,000. And at the same time, an FP doesn't have to be your best friend. Your best friend can be your FP, but it can also be a number of different types of people. It can be online, it can be in person, it can be a family member, it can be any person. And this is often made by the BPD person without choice. It kind of just happens, or it might be kind of created by the BPD person through just liking this person, and it gets more obsessive over time, and it can happen immediately as well. So in having an FP, there's a fair amount of idealization and devaluation. It can make or break a BPD person's day, the tone or response or behavior of the FP. If it feels uncomfortable or if the BPD person feels rejected or abandoned or ignored or anything, it can really affect the BPD person. It can be devastating. You can feel very insecure. You can get very jealous of seeing other interactions with this FP person. Often there is a sense of desperation for approval of the FP. It can even be an abusive relationship, like an abusive person can become the FP of someone, and they can't even control it. The BPD person can't even control that this person has been their FP, and then in reality, the FP has turned into an abusive person. So it can also be an escape from an abusive situation as well. And people can have multiple FPs over time. I myself have had a few FPs over time, and my situation was not as severe as others can. There could be a level of severity, a different level of severity for different people. So mine wasn't so severe. It was I was heavily isolating myself and socially anxious. So my most recent one, the last one, was online. And she was someone that I would end up kind of like parroting and looking for those interactions and so on. So for the reason why we have FPs, one of the reasons why is because we have an unstable self-image as a BPD person, and having an FP, having someone to kind of like emulate or see as this person that brings like a completion to us in a way. For a BPD person, it can bring a stability to the unstable self. So that's why it's such a heavy, strong thing when a BPD person gets a FP. So that's having an FP. Now, what is it like to lose an FP? So losing an FP can have a very strong sense of betrayal, abandonment. It actually can re-traumatize and bring up the abandonment issues from childhood. It kind of like recreates that abandoned child feeling. It's devastating. One can feel very empty, even to the point of suicidal tendencies, self-harm. One can feel very hurt, obsessive, talking about kind of like grieving over it, and resentment, or severely missing the FP. So that's losing the FP. Now, in regards to recovering from this thing within us that creates us to have an FP, to recover from